that if you have a motorcycle accident, they only cover you for 50% of your injuries. So I always tell my friends, if I have an accident on the motorbike and I'm knocked out, take me up a tree and throw me down and say I fell out the tree, because then they might pay for it. Just give me a take. What does it say?
We're rolling.
Okay. Well,
Hello.
my name is Asa, Finnish name. I come from Newcastle in England, and here we are in Thailand. I've been here a while. I first came here in 1998. I had been working in publishing for the last 10 years of my life, although most of my life I worked either in catering or publishing in places like Jersey, Switzerland, London, European mostly. I was living in Teddington, in my house in Teddington, in West London. I was working, this past year I'd been working for a very small publishing company in Dorking. And it was an absolute joy to drive to work. You drove down the A24 and it was a waste of time trying to fight the traffic, because no matter what you did, it was going to take you 1 hour to get to the office.
All right.
So I just relaxed, and in those days the radio was worth listening to. There was good conversation where you wanted it. News wasn't affected the way it is now, and it was very nice. But I was getting a bit fed up with a few things. I was on the right side of the most disastrous relationship I've ever had with a German woman, for whatever that's not really terribly significant where she's from, but it was bloody awful. And so anyway, I was looking at the London Evening News one evening, and I saw a small advert, a British Airways Qantas joint promotion. You could take a round the world trip. You could buy a ticket for £999. There were 6 stops in it, and it was valid for a full year. 3 months after reading that advertisement, there was a New Zealand couple living in my house. I rented my house, and my dear old pal Donald Madden took me to Heathrow Airport, and I took off on this round-the-world trip. And I had 5 objectives, only 5. I didn't want to load up too much. The first one was the whole of Southeast Asia, because I'd never been here before.
This is 98.
This is 1998. So my first objective was the whole of Southeast Asia, and I flew to Bangkok, because this is the hub of it all, and from here you can take your directions as you feel drawn to them. The second objective was to visit a dear friend of mine, Patricia Tian, I'd known her in Jersey, and she was now living in Australia as an Australian citizen. The third objective was to scuba dive at the Great Barrier Reef, which was quite the challenge, because I had no idea what scuba diving was about, but I had this idea I wanted to do that. The fourth objective was to visit the South Island of New Zealand, and the fifth was to go through the Rocky Mountains on the Canadian side.
All right.
So, and I can tell you I fulfilled all of those things and countless other amazing things as well. I don't want to go into it too much, but possibly the most spectacular was I got attacked by a Cheyenne Indian while I was visiting the site of the Little Bighorn battle in 1876 in Montana. So anyway, back to my objectives. I landed in Bangkok, in Thailand, and I traveled extensively in Thailand, right up through the Golden Triangle in the far north, Chiang Rai. I was in islands in the Gulf, so Koh Tao, Koh Phangan, and Koh Samui. I was across into Suratani. I was in Koh Phi Phi and Phuket on the other side. And when I left Thailand, I actually walked into Malaya, as we now call it, Malaysia. I didn't walk all the way.
On the Penang side or the East Coast side?
Hang on, let's think about it. On the East Coast side, yeah. I completed my round-the-world trip. I had been on the road, and I was going to in Denver, Colorado. I was going to this huge complex, which I used to call the Mexican complex, because it was pretty much populated by Mexican people. Fantastic people, super friendly, very interesting, and there would always be at least 3 live music, sometimes a band, sometimes just a guitar player. But it was a really wonderful environment to be in, in this big aircraft hangar, you know. And I remember coming away from there and feeling this lift that I always felt after I came out of there. They always made you feel better coming out than when you went in. The food as well, of course, as well as the other things. And I just began to think, it's time I got home. It's time I told my brothers what I've seen, you know. So I was 2 days later, I was on a plane from Denver back to London, and that completed my round the world trip. I hadn't been back in London for very long, and I'm quite sure even now in retrospect that the job I got offered with a publishing company in Russell Square in London would have been the best job I've had in my life. Great people, they liked the way I wanted to do things, and they were quite happy to let me do it my way, and it was awesome. But I was coming home back to Teddington on the underground train initially from central London, hanging on to my little toggle, you know, the way you do in the rush hour with a crush. And I was closing my eyes and rocking with the carriage, and all I could see was coconut pine trees and turquoise seas, and none of this, you know. The next day, I made a phone call apologizing to these really nice people who were I was expected to be working, and saying, look, I just can't commit myself to what you deserve, and so I'm going to just back out now.
Probably, if it would be now, you're asking them to just work remote.
Well, I did a bit of remote working actually when I was working for a magazine, Personnel Management, and I worked in the first 2 years from home and almost entirely. So it wouldn't be something new to me, because most of the time I'd be out seeing clients first anyway, you know, or a lot of the time anyway. So I could do that. It's I think if I was a better organized person, to tell you the truth, if I was a better organized person, I would probably have worked until I was 65 years old. And I'm quite sure that by then I would have been the advertising director of People Management Magazine. But my job title was Business Development Manager, which was quite amusing. I used to go to exhibitions and fairs and give my card. I remember one time I gave my card to a fellow on a stand, and he read, Business Development Manager. He said, what does that mean? And then I looked at the card he'd given me in exchange, and his was the same, Business Development Manager. So
Great.
I said, we better go and have a drink somewhere, you know. Oh, excuse me. Can we pause this?
I'll cut this out. You're back in London. Now it's 1999?
It's 1999. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to take this job in publishing. And I thought of some other things I could do. I ended up doing a very, very good language teaching course at Trinity College in Twickenham. This is a division of Cambridge University, and they're considered to be one of the best language authorities in the world, actually. So I got a thing that they called TESOL, which stands for Teaching English to Students of Other Languages.
Yeah.
You're thinking of TEFL, which is Teaching is a Foreign Language. But this was a more complex course, and anyway, it's no need to go into the complexities. It is a better qualification, but I'm not saying that TEFL teachers cannot adequately do the job, but at that root stage, it was. I came back to Thailand. I went to Bang Sen. I found an apartment there, and I worked there for a couple of years on and off at two universities, Sipatum University, which is in Chonburi, right next to Bang Sen, and also in Burapha University, which is in Bang Sen. And I did a little bit of English teaching. Mostly it was mostly to second and fourth year graduates at Sipatum, and different kind of student, more mature students in Burapha. Great time. It was a wonderful way of meeting Thai people outside of the tourist interface, because you'll know how it is with restaurants, bars, and all the rest of it. So it was a really a wonderful time, and they have in Thailand still, students still have a great respect for their teachers.
Right.
It's and it's more sincere than have a nice day. You know, it's a very real. I think that actually in Asia, especially, I would say in this point that Japan must be the pinnacle, but they do teach good values to children in school. Things like, common respect for other people. It's if you give your students an instruction, they recognize that it's for their benefit, and they're very compliant. And it's a very pleasant process, the whole thing. I enjoyed it very much. So I did that for a couple of years. What I haven't said from my world trip was that at this time, and it started during that world trip, my heart was very firmly, and a bit of it still is, in the Philippines, and particularly in the Visayan Islands, which are in central Philippines. So you've got Luzon and Manila in the north, and you've got Mindanao in the south, and the Visayan Islands with islands like Leyte, Cebu, Negros in the middle. And it's really, I couldn't imagine wanting to live anywhere else but there. And for the next 5 or 6 years or so, I would spend something between 3 and 6 months in the Philippines, 1 month in Thailand, and then perhaps back in England for a little while, maybe a month in England.
Right. The good part is you say you have a brother there.
He lives in South Shields.
So you have somewhere to go back and crash on the couch.
Well, it's definitely that. But, it's a funny thing with that expression, crashed on the couch. In the early years, it was very easy to knock on somebody's door and say, I'm back for a month, and say, get in that room or this or that. But as you get older and you've drifted away, you don't lose your friendships. Good friendships never fade. But you become a little bit, well, let's say even different, if you like. Not that the whole situation, their situation, because perhaps they're married with families.
You don't want to intrude on somebody's space.
Well, that's another thing. You start to feel a little bit, even despite the heartiness of welcomes that you might get, you start to feel as though you're moving in,
So if you would go to England now for a month, how would you do it? Where would you stay?
I would stay, I've got a base in London with friends. And nowadays I use this Airbnb and stay somewhere like Teddington or Hampton Hill, and then I can branch out.
You're renting then by the day, by the week?
However it works, yeah. Usually by the week, usually take a place for a week. And then if I go up to South Shields, I can stay with my brother. It's perfectly fine and totally comfortable.
Staying a week in the greater area of London, how much would that be?
I would pay about you pay 60 or 70 pounds a night. Now it's not cheap.
Yeah,
it's not cheap.
Isn't it a bit painful if you come from here?
Oh, for sure. I took she's my wife now, but I took my girlfriend about 10 years ago through the Cotswolds. Anybody who doesn't know England ought to know that the Cotswolds is the most quintessentially English place in the country. Lovely sandstone buildings, cottages, streams, lovely pubs and stuff. Yeah, but let's say 10 years ago, we were paying £120 then for one night in a bed and breakfast place. Right. I mean, the tea was great, but come on, 120 quid.
In comparison, how much you're paying here and what you're getting?
No, I used to rent. I used to rent in hotels if I was in Thailand. In the Philippines, I'd find some different, like a chalet or something, some kind of cabin. But in Thailand, you can live. If you take a hotel in Thailand for between, let's say, I'm going by English money, 20 English pounds, let's say up to double 40 English pounds, you'll get a really superb room. You'll get a fully air-conditioned room with a big TV if you want that. Its own private bathroom, a very clean bed. The room will be good, and you'll probably have other facilities as well. In this area, you're pretty sure to have a swimming pool. In Bangkok, much depends on the proximity to the public transport, the Skyway as they call it. Yeah. So, it's exceptionally good value in this country, even better than the Philippines. The Philippines is maybe on a par with costs, but the rooms that you get,
the
quality is not always. Occasionally it can be, but not always up to this.
Yeah, I've seen rooms that, nothing to write home about and are $25 a day.
Yeah. That's an interesting one when you say dollars. He's talking about $25. I remember on that world trip I was walking up the beach in Bohol, which is in the central in the Visayas in the Philippines. And I was looking to find out how you could get a scuba diving course, how much you would pay if you bought half a dozen dives, you know. So I was going from shop to shop, and I was getting frustrated because everybody was saying $20, $25, $30. And the last place I went to, it was a young German woman, was the managing the dive. So I was talking to her, of course, about that. And so I said, so how would it work out then if I took a package of six dives, including all the equipment? And, you know, I have to try to do her German accent. She said, well, it's $25. And I said, why are you quoting me dollars? I'm English, you're German, this is not America, and you quote me dollars. And this is what she said. She said, well, we buy the equipment in the USA. And I said to her, look, I came here this morning in a taxi. It was made in Japan, but I didn't pay yen for the taxi fare. So, well, she was a rare German. She had a sense of humor, and we got on extremely well after that. She saw the humor and says, okay, come on, here you go. She gave it to me in pesos. But it was, you've got to get, I suppose you have to get used to often being quoted dollars in when you're traveling in this region. But so where are we? So I was in love in the Philippines. I even got to the stage when I sold my house in Teddington in 2005-06. I made an accepted offer on a lot of land because where I live in the Philippines, there's no high rises. So most of my friends who come from all over Europe, Germany, Sweden, Italy, America, and of course USA, they tend to buy a lot and build a house on it. And that was my plan.
What island is that?
That's on Cebu. On Cebu, it's about 3 hours away from Cebu City. It's a glorious island to drive across. It's beautiful, beautiful. Once you get out of the city.
It's the side that's facing Negros?
It's the side, the Negros Channel is between where I would have been and Negros.
All right.
So these two islands, they're a bit like that in juxtaposition, and they're big islands. And as I say, from one side across the south to from the Cebu City to Moalboal, it's about 3 hours.
Yes.
That actually turned into one of the reasons why I was pleased that I didn't live there in the end, because no matter what the situation, you are always a minimum of 3 hours away from any kind of medical help. And I had some incidents where friends of mine were hurt in motorcycle accidents and things, and it's a bit daunting to be that far away from medical help. And
you wouldn't like to live in Cebu City?
Well, you know what? I don't even think the ants are happy in Cebu City now. What's happened in Cebu City is, the Philippines is much poorer than Thailand is. There's things to make up for it. There's a charm in the people that comes across readily, and there's a lot of English spoken because of the American influence there. But Cebu City and the whole of the Philippines actually has raced ahead in development, and nothing has been done on infrastructure. So you've got these tiny little streets all over the city that are choked. The airport to Cebu is on an island called Mactan, which is removed from the mainland, obviously by being an island. It's got two bridges that connect it. But if you're on Mactan Island and you want a taxi to the city, or vice versa, at a certain time of the day, they will not take you because they know they can't get back.
Right.
They can't get back within hours, within too many hours for them.
But kind of a pain if you need to go to the airport.
Well, if you need to go to the airport, you have to prepare yourself. Taxis do run there. You need to be, unlike me, very punctual and make plenty of provision for time. I'm not saying that you can't get them, but they're very reluctant at certain times of the day to take a fare. But yes, of course, you can get them.
If you don't have too much luggage, you could take a motorcycle taxi.
You could take a motorcycle, yeah. If you haven't bought a Filipino guitar. But anyway, this deal, this plan to buy a lot of land, it was with the siblings of a family, which were 8 siblings. It fell through. Never mind the detail. And I didn't have time on that trip to start looking for elsewhere, except that I did find out that it's very difficult to find land with any kind of title that will stand up in court in this area. So my plans were pretty thwarted when the deal fell through. And on my way home, I landed in Bangkok. I had a few days in Bangkok, and I realized that in Thailand you can buy a condo or an apartment, call it what you will, in your own name. Up to the law allows 49%, I always think of it as 50-50, 49% of any building can be owned by non-Thais. And I knew by this time, I'd sold my house, and I knew by this time I was going to be based in this part of the world. And I felt all I need is a base, because I can go to the Philippines or Malaysia or anywhere else I want to go very easily from here. And so I bought a small condo in Naklua, north of Pattaya, where we are now. And someone asked me that's 2005. So someone asked me when I was in the Philippines, a Swiss friend of mine, Herbert, he said, "When did you decide to live in Thailand as opposed to the Philippines?" And it made me think. And I said to him, I haven't actually made that decision. It's just the way things unfolded. Once I got my own place and I did it the way I wanted, I gravitated more to the place that was home now.
Right.
And over the next, let's say, 4 or 5 years, the time scales changed. I was 1 month in the Philippines and 3 to 6 months in Thailand after that, so, and of course now I live here full time. And I am, at the beginning I was wondering about how things would go, because as I say, a big part of my heart is still very much in the Philippines. But some practical factors came into it as well. For example, the place that I used to go to, Panexama, it became extremely popular with 3 types of tourists: Japanese, Korean, and young backpacker travelers. All very fine people. The Filipino village is called Moal Boal, and the place where we lived is called Panagsama, which is on the coast. Well, Moal Boal is on the coast. It's all on the coast.
South of it?
It's in the southwest of Cebu.
I mean, the place you Panagsama is south of Malboal.
No, it's adjacent to it.
All right.
It's adjacent
because there used to be a waterfall.
There's a place. Yes, there's a beautiful natural resort there. It's called Kawasan Falls.
Kawasan.
It's a plural because there are many. The further in you go, the more there are. And what's intriguing about the Philippines is not only is the sea, but also the river that comes from these waterfalls is crystal clear. We in England would say it's like gin. It's so clear, the water. It's quite a pleasure to see both. Might be unfair here, because the reason this water is not so clear is because there's a sand mud base, which tends to from time to time leave the water. The water is perfectly safe to swim in, but
it doesn't look nice.
It doesn't look so tempting as the gin of the Philippines. So I bought this place here. I had some affairs to sort out in England, and from time to time I'd go there. But I always went back, apart from one period of 4 years, which was a long time. But I usually go back once a year. Speaking about where hearts are located, I'm from the north. I'm a Geordie, so despite this strange sounding accent, I am a Geordie, and a big bit of my heart is still right there in South Shields, where I'm from. And of course, I still have a brother there, and all my brothers, we were 4, we were all very close. So if anything changes now, I'm wondering if I would go back. I certainly wouldn't go back so frequently. I wouldn't make it a point of going every year. But I'm lucky. I hear lots of criticisms about life in England, and lots of them are very well founded. But I've been very fortunate that I was living most of my life in the Twickenham, Teddington, Richmond area, and it's beautiful.
How do you do with your visa in Thailand?
Well, it's much, much easier now. In fact, it's so easy now that I would say it's not hardly worth a discussion. But it was very complicated in the beginning. And the reason was that it was complicated, I think, is because we all in this area have to go to one small office, which is Pattaya Immigration Office. And this, as the popularity of the area is compounded, it's made things very difficult. In the beginning, there were all kinds of stories. Now, I never experienced it, so I'm only telling you what I heard people say, that to get your visa. If you go in and put some money under the table, you could get it done quickly, or this, that, and the other. There were various ways that you could smooth the issue. I always felt this: I'm not doing anything illegal, so why should I act as though I am?
Right.
And it's the same. This is not diverting from the point. I already mentioned that you can legitimately buy a condominium, or let's say 50% of a building in your own name. So,
Not to be misunderstood, you buy your condo fully.
yes,
Only if the place has 50 apartments, only 24 can be sold to foreigners.
yes. If we, the easier way is to say, look, if a building has 100 apartments, 50 of them can be registered at the land office in the name of a non-Thai. Now, a lot of friends of mine would be buying the other 50, and there's a loophole in the law which enables you to buy it in a company name, because you can legally have a company in Thailand.
All right.
And it means that you have to pay a very small nominal tax. It's a couple of £100 a year for the it's a corporate tax that you have to pay. But there have been examples in various parts of Thailand. A few years ago in Phuket, there was a big purge on it, where these people were put into a very difficult situation. So I never felt inclined to buy something through a loophole. I thought,
Right. Why should you?
Yeah, exactly.
Either you do it right or you don't do it.
We actually, our rights to be here are very tenuous. Even I've been here a long time. I'm now married to a Thai. I own a property in Thai. I still, if things turn in a certain way, they could refuse to renew my annual visa. We have to apply each year for we call it a retirement visa. They have another name for it, but nevertheless, there's no guarantee from one year to the next whether you buy property or anything else. I'm not even sure if even having children would alter that fact. So we're all very tenuous. So why compound the tenuous nature of your stay by buying a property through a loophole? That's my logic. Lots of people that I know, and they're clever guys, have done it, and they're quite happy with it. But it's always worth taking information and then doing your own thinking as well. And if you think that you wouldn't do that in another environment, don't
do it
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, going back to the visa. So it used to be that you could go to, they tell you which documents you need, which photocopies, which proofs you needed, and you'd get it all together, and then there'd be something you've forgotten or didn't know about even. And this applies to even buying and selling cars and motorbikes and doing lots of other things in Thailand. So that's how it was then. So you could be frustrated. I mean, but that's as far as it would get. It could be very frustrating, but it never got more than frustrating. Perhaps you had to go 3 or 4 times. Now, really, I believe it could not be simpler. Presuming you're doing it legitimately, because
Right.
in Thailand, you need to have a certain income, which I think is $65,000 a year or something like that, or you need to have a fixed sum of money, which is it's remained static at 800,000 baht for all the time I've been here. That 800,000 baht now is the equivalent of about 27,000 pounds. When I first came here, it was about 16,000 pounds. But you have to have these funds in a bank, and you have to show that it was in the bank, I believe, 3 months before you apply for your visa, and it must be there for some months after. So you have to really consider your loss of interest on that money as being the price to pay in Thailand. If you can afford to do that,
You
then-
need the bank deposit or the income, not both.
yes, one or the other.
Right.
Or you can even
Which-
have part of one and part of the other.
It's right now catch-22 because you don't get the visa without a bank account, and you don't get a bank account right now. Right? Yesterday, day before yesterday, the bank said no more bank accounts as of now for foreigners.
I've not heard that, and that's worrying, actually.
Yeah.
That's worrying because you have to start thinking, what's behind it? What are they trying to put a squeeze on foreigners, or a squeeze on some types
Well,
of
what they
foreigners?
say and what they think might be two different things. And
Well,
what they mandate today might not be there next week. As of now, I hear day before yesterday or so, no bank accounts for foreigners. So I suppose for the next couple of weeks, no retirement visas for foreigners.
well, it is a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? I've just renewed my visa on the strength of that fundament, you know.
Well,
So,
if you have a bank account, you're safe.
mm,
You just don't get a new one. So if a guy comes in today, he's out of luck.
I've heard, and I've never had the problem myself, but I've heard some fellas saying that they couldn't open a bank account, and
Right.
you know.
Bank
So that's-
account only if I have a long-term visa. Long-term visa only if you have a bank account.
Well, there might be a whole new discussion there. I'm not sure, but I can tell you this: with my 800,000 baht in the bank, I went to my bank, Krung Thai Bank, and I said I would like to put these funds into an investment account, and it's only 1.5% interest, so it's nothing spectacular, but better in your pocket than theirs. And the girl told me, you cannot open a deposit account. I said, and the reason is, and she said, because you have a marriage visa. I got married last year to my long-term lady, and this particular bank will not allow me to open an account. So she said, it was only 2 months to my visa being renewed. So she said, just renew it as a single person visa next time, and then you can open an account. Now that seems bizarre to me, because I think if someone is married to a Thai, or to anyone anyway, you need the money more, you need more money than if you're on your own. Yet they ask you for 800,000 baht as a single person, and only 400,000 if you're married to a Thai. Plus, there's this anomaly that some banks won't allow you to open a deposit account, an interest-bearing account, with a marriage visa, and I can't see any logic to it. So, and I won't find any looking for it. But
any way that rules and regulations change every couple of months anyway.
I don't want to be critical, but I think because if people who criticize the way that Thailand is run and the way Thais do it, have to be on a very strong piece of high ground that they think their own country is better. And I'll tell you this, I was in the queue at the immigration just recently getting my visa renewal, and there was an English voice behind me, a very belligerent English voice, you know, a moaner. I'll quote him and you can edit it out. What a way to run a fucking country. So I turned around this fellow, he was about 3 people back, and I said, you're not about to suggest that the one you come from is any better. He was English and I was English. So then he started dialogue with me. I said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, I just want you to think. You know, think. Because if my wife wants to come to England for a visit, believe me, it's an absolute nightmare. You can row across to England from France or North Africa on a rowing boat, and they'll give you a 5-star hotel and a lot of other stuff, which, let's not whinge about that. But in this country, if you come into this country legitimately, the worst thing that'll happen, and this is going back to the current situation at immigration. I hear people talking about, I pay an agency to get my visa because I can't be bothered with the hassle of immigration. Here's the hassle. This is the hassle in one sentence. You have to wait in a queue. Bang. There's no more hassle. If you can go there, tell them what you want. They will tell you exactly what you need. You don't need to be an academic. You will need copies of documents. They will tell you everyone you need. That's all the wit you need. And you go away and you get those documents photocopied and you come back. And then the worst thing that you have to do after that is wait in a queue. And when you get to immigration, it's so well organized. You stand in a queue first to get the number to know which queue you should be sitting in. When you stand in the first queue, there's a number of young Thai people. Most of them speak very good English. All of them speak adequate English to tell you what you need to do. And they will tell you. It's not complicated. That's the worst. Stand in a queue. Get to know what documents you need and do it. Unless there are some people who are not in the financial requirements. So they'll go to an agency and they'll pay to get a visa. And I don't want to say anything about that, but
All right. You have to read between the lines there.
well, yes, and I just feel that I'm even in the immigration because they used to try to catch you out on this financial thing. You know, that a couple of tricky characters there who would trawl through your bank book and look for occasions when your funds dipped below the 800,000 figure. They didn't have them this time, so I wonder if they've dispensed with that. If you're legitimate and you followed the rules that are set out for you,
No
you
problem.
don't. Why pay an agency?
Right.
Would you pay somebody £300 to sit in a queue for you? It's your choice.
Yeah, if you're rich and if you're impatient.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, let's close this topic because rules change every 6 months.
yes.
If you come anytime to Thailand, then inquire. And if you can't do it by your own, then ask an agent if he can do it for you for some extra money.
I think that you could probably Google for all of the information that you need. It's not. It really isn't complicated. Even if you feel, if you're not sure, because you get a certain period of time. I think it's a month on arrival, and for that month you can investigate what your options are. Another thing you might do is find a local Thai embassy in your own country, because in the past I've gone to the embassy in London, the Thai embassy in London, and they give you a 3-month visa there. So there's different ways of coming. If you arrive without a visa, certainly from Britain and I think most European countries, you'll get, as far as I understand it, a month visa. And if you want to stay longer, go down to immigration.
And ask.
They'll tell you what you need to do.
Right. Last question before we finish.
Mhm.
Health insurance. Sawadee Cup.
Well, I had it. Yeah, nice shirt. Is that a better one than mine? Health insurance. Again, it's all about money. That's the first thing. It costs money, and I would not want to be in this country without some kind of health insurance. And a lot of years ago, I remember taking a health insurance. I think it was at the time. It worked out at £1,000 a year because I was younger then.
All right.
And a friend of mine, he said to me, "Bloody hell, £1,000 just for health insurance." I said, "No, Chad, £10,000." He said, "What?" I said, "I intend to stay here 10 years. So it'll be £10,000, I expect, or possibly more."
Right.
So I know lots of friends of mine as well who have none, and they tend to, if they have a problem, they rely on the local hospitals, and they generally look after you. But I do know a Dutch friend of mine who had a motorcycle accident, broke his leg very severely. He was in Bangkok hospital, and they found that his Dutch insurance would not stand behind him on this.
Right.
So they put his leg in a plastic cup, and they sent him home. And we had to have a whip round to get a special seat for him on the plane to take him home. But I also know a friend who had skin cancer, and he was treated in the regular system. Health insurance is very expensive. But really, if you're going to take out health insurance, you must find out what is covered, because I know lots of guys say, "Oh, I just pay 150 quid a year for my health insurance."
Right.
And then they find out what is covered and what's not.
Right.
I mean, I ride motorcycles. That was one of the reasons why I took out the insurance, and I was very chagrined to find out that if you have a motorcycle accident, they only cover you for 50% of your injuries. So I always tell my friends, if I have an accident on the motorbike and I'm knocked out, take me up a tree and throw me down and say I fell out the tree, because then they might pay for it. So you should, but there are very good, I'll tell you now, there are very good insurance companies here. And I must say about all the Thai insurance companies, whether it's driving a motorbike, a car, or your health insurance, I haven't heard of anyone being let down by the insurance company. They meet the claims unless it's skullduggery, and then of course you know what to expect.
Ada, thank you for the interview.
Well, you know me, I like to talk. But
Another day in paradise.
yeah, it is paradise. It's but you know, paradise is not a place. Paradise is an attitude of mind.
There we go.
I'll leave it at that.